Hey, peace, y'all. Welcome to day 8 of the work-based learning program from Repaired Nations. I'm really excited to continue learning about collective courage and the history of our folks doing collective work and creating a ton of abundance from it. Um, Also, we'll be going over a little bit of taking the war out of our words again, just so I can wrap up yesterday. And I'll do a brief introduction to this check-in technique called pies. Um, man, always glad to be doing this work with you, Brother Ted. Uh, I'll just jump in.
Let's
Um,
do it. Always, brother.
all right, for sure. So, yesterday, we read some on taking the war out of our words. And yeah, Ted was asking for me to like give some examples of like how the different things look. Um, and so I went through the book. The awesome thing about this book is that the author like brings in a lot of like examples, kind of colloquially. And so I'll just kind of read from those for each of the different categories. So the first one on surrender betray is on page 23, which I'll be reading. A good example is Gordon, who worked together with Selma on a variety of projects. When Selma asked Gordon to undertake a certain task necessary for their project, he always complied. However, when he would ask her to do a project-related task, she would usually respond by sighing, rolling her eyes, and shaking her head. Gordon was worried about the quality of their work and did not want to be in conflict with Selma, so he often did more than his share. He also decided that he was asking too much of Selma, particularly since she was recently divorced and trying to adjust to being a single parent. In addition, he thought she had been at the company longer, so he needed to prove his willingness to go the extra mile. Gordon surrendered to Selma when she acted irritated with him for asking her to do her share of project tasks. He not only gave in to her message that she didn't want to do her part, he also blamed himself for demanding too much of her. When we betray ourselves by this type of surrender, our primary purpose is usually some form of self-protection. But we may also be protecting another person, as Gordon was, even though Selma was taking advantage of him. Many of us make excuses for coworkers, friends, or family members who treat us rudely, rationalizing as to why they are in a bad mood, as if we are doing them a favor by allowing them to treat us poorly. Okay, so that's surrender betray. Surrender sabotage. There's an example on page 30. Uh, when we follow a supportive sentence with a subtle or perhaps direct put down, we sabotage. Clara told a woman she met at a professional meeting about her artistically talented son. The woman responded, "How wonderful that he has such gifts. It is so nice that each person has special talents." Clara felt put down by the woman's switch from initial support of her pleasure in her son's ability to an apparent need to remind her that he was no more special than anyone else. Compliment followed by insult. Or recall the example of Elena's comment to Susan from chapter 1. "You look so beautiful in that dress," followed by, "It's so nice that they make better clothes for large women now." That's kind of shady. Okay, so those are some, that was surrender sabotage. Are those helpful examples, Tuck?
Yes, totally. Totally. So I'm assuming that you know, surrender, sabotage on in like a cooperative sense would be like, oh man, you're doing great. But um but you're black, so uh aren't you people good at this anyway? You know? Like
Yeah, that would definitely be Uh, yeah, surrender, sabotage. I put some examples up in here. And one of the examples is like prejudice jokes or sarcasm,
Mm,
or like procrastination on things, compliments followed by insults.
right.
So yeah, for sure. Whereas like when you get into withdrawal, um, page 36 has an example for withdraw escape. Our motive here is to protect ourselves from escaping from some interaction. Some of us may not even regard this kind of withdrawal as defensive, but rather just an unwillingness to engage in negative or unpleasant conversation. We suggest that we are above power struggle when we say to a third party, well, I wasn't going to fight over it. If he wants to think that way, let him. When we do not set clear boundaries or express our opinion in any way, we are often still reacting defensively. Okay. Oh, I have to go. Okay, so an example, Maria was having dinner with her friend Celeste, who spent the entire evening talking about how insecure she felt in her relationship with the man she had been with for several years. During this conversation, Maria was shocked to learn that Celeste had never told him she had an eating disorder. Dismayed, Maria thought, here's a woman who is a physician, well respected in her field, and she spent the entire evening talking about how afraid she is to tell the man she loves about a critical issue in her life. Celeste may have been afraid of rejection. She may have also been cautious about telling her partner because if their relationship ended on negative terms, he would possess damaging information about her. Um, Frustrated with her friend's insecurity, Maria subsequently withdrew from Celeste without telling Celeste how she felt. We may also withdraw in order not to hurt another person's feelings or to avoid dealing with some demand or expectation one has. So that's the withdraw escape example. Withdraw and trap is going to be on page 43. Um, and so an example of withdraw and trap. Um, okay. I remember sometimes being really jealous of my little sister Candy because she was always so good, whereas I sometimes got into trouble, usually from being rambunctious or talking back. One day when Candy was taking her turn at washing the dishes, I asked her in a conspiratorial friendly whisper, do you always rinse every dish? For a while, she insisted she did, but finally, in response to my friendly coaxing, she admitted that she fudged once in a while. Whereupon I ran to my mom, gleefully shouting, Mom, Candy doesn't always rinse every dish either. Sometimes I must have thought that Candy's imperfections would vindicate me. Usually it didn't help my cause with my mother, and my sister felt that I had turned a moment of confidence against her. And trapping in this way is a bit like the tattling we tell we did with kids. In addition to using questions simply to avoid self-exposure, we may also use questions to entrap another person into exposing damaging information, like an espionage agent. That's the withdraw and trap portion. And then lastly, for counterattack, there is an example on page 50. Um, Lisa and Sawyer often had arguments about how much Lisa spent on the groceries. Sawyer did not like to shop or cook, so Lisa often did both. She was frustrated because Sawyer liked to have wonderful meals, especially when they had friends over. But he didn't seem to understand what kinds of ingredients were necessary to make those meals and how much it all cost. Sawyer, who paid the bills and felt the financial pressures, accused Lisa of not being mindful of budgetary restrictions. Sawyer fell into the habit of confronting Lisa about the cost of the groceries as soon as she returned from shopping. She usually felt defensive before she even walked in the door, and almost invariably, he would be upset about the amount. What? You spent $150? We don't nearly need this much. Often, Lisa would respond gently, honey, I was really careful. I tried to get enough so we wouldn't have to keep running back to the store all week. I think it ends up being cheaper this way. And your folks will all be here. Your folks will be here all weekend. I knew you'd want to serve nice meals. The wine for dinner really adds to the cost. Lisa was defending both her behavior and her rationale regarding her grocery purchases. Sometimes, frazzled from the stress of being criticized, Lisa would go on a tirade. I don't want to have to run to the store 10 times this week. Do you want me to feed your parents turkey neck soup? Okay, so counterattack, justify. Example. Lastly, blame. I found on 55. The motive in counterattack blame is to retaliate with overt aggression. Here we attack the other person's position rather than simply defend our own. An example of this defensive mode is depicted in an old Andy Capp cartoon. Andy stumbles into his house in a drunken stupor, apparently in the wee hours of the morning, to be greeted by his wife, hands on her hips, hair wound up on curlers. Andy peers at her and bellows, is that any way to greet your husband when he comes home? As he staggers past her, he comments under his breath, a good offense is the best defense. When we counterattack by verbally assaulting someone else, we hope to get ourselves off the hot seat by putting the other person on the defensive. Andy's criticism of his wife's late night appearance is a calculated attempt to distract her from focusing on his drunkenness. So yeah, those are a few examples, real world, hopefully enough, for the defensive reactions that fall under surrender, withdraw, and counterattack. And there is no official prompt for this section. It's more so giving you all an opportunity to look into some things that may help you be able to understand yourself better and the way you're interacting with others. Just reading through this book and getting you all the details, I'm like reminding myself like, oh, I've been doing that, haven't I? I should probably give, the loved ones a break. It wasn't intentional, but it did happen. Any questions before we get over into the collective courage? Or Didi, Balas, and Didi, I'm sorry, Deanna or Balas, you as well. Questions, you can unmute or put them in the chat. Go ahead, bro.
Yeah, I think that was beautiful, the explanations. And yeah, please, Blas, Didi, it'd be nice to hear y'all's thoughts about the readings and how they apply to your life, the work. What did you think about? Have you been the perpetrator or on the receiving end of some of these energies? It would just dope to hear y'all add if you choose to. And yeah,
we can also do those in the the check-ins that we have if folks want to kind of talk it through in a more closed container first.
Right.
Yeah, I think this is really helpful. I am the withdraw escape. I can be very passive aggressive sometimes. Yeah, I think that this is really helpful just to really unpack like some of the behaviors I do. And I also do the counterattack justify. I could be defensive. So I think this is really helpful just to be mindful of it when working with other folks, because then it helps like alleviate any problems with like any issues when it comes to working with other people. So I think this is really helpful.
Sure. Thank you. So we're moving along, family. Some of you all are just getting like snippets of collective courage, reading, doing the prompts an extra 30 to 40 minutes after. Some of you all are going deep, going like, 2 to 3 hours afterwards in this stuff for the co-op dev folks. And yeah, the last two sections, like I think are some of the more inspiring sections in the book, or chapters 5 and 6, like really demonstrating that when we come together, it doesn't matter if there's a recession, like we got each other. And so, yeah, really excited for you all to continue going through this book and seeing, what our folks are up to in the 30s. I'll start off chapter 6 with this quote by Jacob Reddix. I still believe that Black people in the United States could lift the burden of economic exploitation from their backs by organizing a nationwide system of cooperative businesses through which they could produce and distribute to themselves and others such consumer needs as food, clothing, household goods, and credit. Such a system would include credit unions, consumer cooperative retail stores, producer cooperatives. I think that vision is still true today, and we're still working towards that. But I'm happy to say that we've been making some very interesting progress in a lot of these areas inside of Repaired Nations. But yeah, aside from that, when you're entering into this book, pages pages 126 through 147. You're going to be reading, it starts off with this overview about all of the mini cooperatives that we're going to be reading through or about through this time. Some actually a little bit more in terms of the list that you'll be going through. But firstly, as you're reading through this, with the first and last sentence of each paragraph before like diving in to get like the goods, like pay special attention to the National Negro Business League and Colored Merchants Association. I think we've all heard about Booker T. Washington and Tuskegee, but didn't necessarily know that he created a business league. He and others created a business league that in turn created a marketing association for cooperatives. And that association had about 200 stores before it went under. It's like, yo, like Sanko for that and bring it back to your friends and your family. So prompt number 1 is to bring or take note of 2 interesting, inspiring facts about the National Negro Business League and Colored Merchants Association. Anything you'd like to add about this section, Ty?
No, I think you struck a nerve, Brother Balas. Was like 200 stores. Yeah, Booker T was phenomenal to do what he did in his time and to be granted the resources that he received. Yeah, so like Brother Greg said, Sanko for that. See what you can bring back from studying this section. Because it's some gems, maybe a business idea. It'll be nice.
Sure. And so like as we're moving like deeper through the book, past the Colored Merchants Association, we're going to get into like what was going on in New York City in the 1930s. And I think, we know a lot of folks were there and like it was kind of popping in terms of like art. Asking for you to read through and view a lot of this stuff, but pay special attention to the Paul Laurence Dunbar apartments. We're asking for you to pull 2 interesting facts out of this section, and that's prompt number 2 for this day 8. And this, Ted, do you want to talk about this one?
It's just so amazing what they were able to do. The Paul Dunbar cooperative, the housing cooperative. I don't want to give too much, but you know, they face some adversity. They overcame some things, and some things happened, but their story is a part of the legacy, the cooperative legacy that was over there in New York in this time. And like Brother Greg said, this was around the time of the Great Depression. So I know Repaired Nations, we took a lot from that section. And I don't want to give away too much, but just know there's some gems. We've, just like Brother Get, once again, we actually Sankofa that a lot with that section. So just meditate on legacy, meditate on legacy. And what would you like to see something like that duplicated, like in today's time in Oakland, California, and what would that look like to you? And then reach out to us, and we have a surprise or some information to let you know. That should hopefully get you excited. So yeah, it's real life things going on with specifically with this part right here with the Dunbar legacy, and yeah, really, really, really excited about that.
Yeah, co-op dev folks, like as you're going through the book, maybe pull out a like inflation calculator. So when they're talking about numbers, like what folks were investing, like what they like were making it per month, per year, whatever, like you can see what that looks like in today's time. And it's usually a wow. It's like, oh, they were really doing it. So I just want to say that as you're moving through. The last section are about cooperatives outside of New York. And I think she focuses on like 2 or 3. We've kind of talked about one, the consumer trading company in Gary, but there's more info in here than was talked about in the last section or the last chapter. Prompt number 3 for day 8 is to also take 2 inspiring, interesting facts outside of the co-ops outside of New York section and stick them in the general ed portal. Just a reminder, I shared this document with you all, 2021 work-based learning curriculum. It's usually inside of the emails as well. This is where you'll find like, what's going on for the different weeks. We're in week 2 at the end. I link the YouTube videos to the days. So that's where you're getting the sections if you need to, or that's where you're getting, the videos, the part of the education and the prompts. And yeah, you'll find the ed portal here. And just go over it for one last time. Name, email, either the date or the assignment number, and then the prompts. Ted, anything you'd like to say at the end of this before I just give a general recap of the prompts for the last couple of days?
Yeah, I just want to say a little section in this chapter. It says, Jessica Gordon Nemhard says, the Great Depression probably saw the rise of more African-American owned cooperatives than any other period in U.S. history. Okay, just that snippet of time right there when the nation was in peril, when it was in its own economic pandemic, you saw the African-American community rise. And we weren't getting no stimuluses, we weren't getting no EDD, we weren't getting, no PPP, but we had each other. And like Brother Greg said, I pull out them calculators, because believe it or not, a penny, $1.50 in the 30s, it went a long way, but it's not too hard. It's something that we can do today. So just imagine, where we're at. Talked about this earlier in the week about post-pandemic, post-corona, and the opportunity that you have to work together in a collective to bring about some solutions and some answers that we desperately need in our community. So yeah, just wanted to highlight that you're reading about a real sad time in American history, but in our story, a lot of our cooperative legacy was captured and encapsulated right here, led by some beautiful individuals. So just wanted to highlight that.
Sure. The very last sentence of this chapter is also like super relevant. Would you mind reading this before I do the wrap up with the assignments?
No question. It said, the cooperative movement is based on the deep and abiding religious principles of honesty, justice, equality, brotherhood, and love. The cooperative movement is interfaith, interclass, and interrace. Therefore, it gives us the common meeting ground, which produces the best setting for working together.
Yep, that's right. All right, so
Race first, baby.
yeah. Okay, so see, this week was assignments numbers 4 through 8. Or no, I'm sorry, 5 through 8. Yesterday, assignment number 7. We scratched the first one about the taking the word out of our words. So the questions were, how did you know of Ella Baker before this in Reading Collective Courage, this program in Reading Collective Courage? And then name 2 favorite aspects of the Young Negro Cooperative League legacy. So those are number 7, which was yesterday. Number 8, today, give us 2 interesting or inspiring facts about the Colored Merchants Association, the CMA. 2 about the Dunbar Lawrence Apartments in New York. And then 2 about the cooperatives outside of New York City. As always, really grateful to be doing this work with you all. Thank you all for reaching out when the info was a little bit tricky or you just needed some support, like figuring out how to move through. Tut and I are always available for that kind of thing, especially if it's like a text or an email or something. We'll be setting up check-ins if we haven't already with you, so we can stay in constant contact. And yeah, thank you all. Next week, week 3, more of cooperative history and interpersonal communication before jumping into group agreements, facilitation, and then we're out of this first section and into the next section, governance and planning. So I'm excited about the next steps and really appreciative of you all as always. Big love, Tut. Thank you, man. All right, we'll see y'all later.
Much love, brother. See y'all.
Bye.
Tut.